We are going to be talking today about two pieces, as you can see if you've got that agenda. One of which is to spend time just really grounding ourselves on where are we in this, so that we're not just blindly going along a process, but we're stepping back to say, here's where we are. And then spending time continuing what we were talking about last time, which is turning the class description and the conditions into learning objectives, which will eventually become lesson plans. So what I'd like to do is walk you guys through a couple of things. I'm going to share my screen a whole bunch, and what you can do if you would like to see, I think if I share the screen, you guys will see everybody. So I'm going to just do that. But there's two pieces that I want to walk us through. One is where we are process-wise, and one is where we are logistics-wise. Logistics being calendar and teaching and the stuff. So let me, hopefully I've queued everything up, but we're going to find out. I want to start by taking you guys to the faculty resource page to show you guys what is there. So let me quit out of this and share the screen. And okay. I've tried in the agenda to put all of the links so that if you guys want to not watch this on the screen, but watch it on your own screen or come back to it, you've got it. But Dimitri spent some time yesterday. We originally had this as the faculty resource page just for the 101, and he spent time creating a home page so that we can then add, here's the resource page for the 102, for the 103. So as I click into that 101 page, can you guys see what I clicked into?
Yes.
Okay, because sometimes the sharing of the screen changes if you change where the screen is. I want to just walk you through what's here, and also give you a sense of how that fits with what we're doing. Those of you who were in or watched the video of the walking through of the 101 class will recognize that we talked about the fact that the class really starts from the moment somebody signs up, and in actuality it starts from the time they read the promotions. They read what the class is all about, and they get excited about it. And as your friend did, Trey, says, I want this, when is this? And so what we have is resources that will, and here is that video for any of you who missed that session where we all got together and we walked through it. And what we did during that session, if you haven't watched it or would like to watch it again, is we literally went through each and every one of these and said what happens during each of that, and especially from the instructor perspective. Here's what they learned, here's what the content is. And with the exception of the fact that the content, I'm going to try and annotate. We're going to find out if I can actually do that, because that would take mad skills. This part right here is the content. That's going to change the stuff we're teaching. But the fact that the co-instructors will send welcome and logistics emails, and the co-instructors will send the reading materials and resend information, and between the synchronous class time, there's homework. All of the stuff, the logistics stuff, the format stuff, that's going to be the same. We're just going to stick different content in those sessions and different content in the reading. So let's see if I can continue here. The course description was just that blog post that described it, and the reading and viewing list, just as a reminder to those of you who haven't been in immersion in a while, it looks just like just like the reading and viewing that you would get during immersion. Here's the videos, here's the reading, what we gave them. We will be doing the same for this class. they will be getting the reading and viewing materials ahead of time so that they can get ready. All right, now where's the back button? I don't know where the back button is. Wait, do I have it? Nope, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to find what I'm working on and go back.
So now we need like elevator music.
I know. Well, what's interesting to me too is I can't find the back button on here even when I'm not in it. I can't find how to escape out of this.
So are you in full screen mode?
Right click on it and see if you'll get a menu that says back. Does it?
No, it just doesn't want to. Well, I'm going to, it won't let me escape the viewer. It's what it's not letting me do.
I'll come up quickly.
Zoom in, zoom out, stand up, sit down, fight, fight, fight.
And, all right, let's see if it's...
I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to reload the page.
Okay.
I'm going to just reload the page. Sorry, gang.
And what I would, if you...
Please go.
Okay, what I would suggest is once you reload the page, right-click and open it in a new tab, as opposed to the same tab. That way
you are very smart, Mr. Petropoulos. That is what I will do. That is exactly what I will do.
And the hesitation I had there was, am I giving advice? Do I want to give advice? Do I want to let them discover it on their own? In this particular case,
no.
I gave advice.
And that was great. So thank you for that.
Sometimes I don't want my plumber teaching me how to fix the...
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and you know, the thing that is...
Hey, wait a minute. Are you saying I'm a plumber?
If you were, honey, you'd have a lot more value than any of us.
That's true.
You said it was all a bunch of pipes.
I did.
Tubes. Okay, so moving back to where we was. So as we move through here, there's the course description, the reading and viewing. There is the script that we use for the pre-class call. Of course, because it's in another...
No, they just go to that tab. Just click on that.
Not easy to do because you can't move this thing at the top.
No, you don't have to. Just click on that tab.
I can't click on the tab if I can't see the tab.
Oh, I can see the tab. That's fine. We can all see the tab.
Okay, at any rate, the script is...
Right. Go up.
The script is there for the pre-class call, and we're going to talk about that later. We also created a comprehensive list of the practices that we taught and modeled in the course. And that was after. We didn't share that with people because we didn't want them thinking that this was a checklist of things that they should do. But as instructors, we want to know what the practices are. And then we created lesson plans. We're going to come back to this in a little while, but I wanted to mostly show you everything that is on here. And the fact that Dimitri found a wonderful shot in the video where everybody seems to be smiling and laughing, which I like.
I absolutely love this page.
Yeah.
Having each thing that I can reach, the scripts, the what do I need at the time I need it kind of information that we know we've seen before, we've looked at it before. Now I think I could find it. That would be just amazing to actually be able to find again what I've seen before.
Yeah, and so as Andrea is sort of working to pull things together, what will be really fun is that there's stuff we're going to need as we're building this class. And that is completely different than the stuff that 2, 3, 4 years from now an instructor is going to need to teach the class. So what you've got now in that 101 page is the benefit, and we can build on as we're creating this class, we can build on everything that we've already gone through. We've already learned. We've done a lot of the learning. But this will be, so there'll actually be 2 resource pages. There's going to be the one we'll absolutely need now, and then the one that somebody will need if they're actually going to teach this thing. Moving from there, I want to share with you how the objectives last time turned into lesson plans, because it wasn't a, oh, okay, we'll have this discussion, this will become clear, and we'll know, well, that's session 2, and that's session 4, and that's session 3, and yeah, I wish it was magic like that, but we've mentioned this is not magic dust. So what I want to start with, and I think that you guys will appreciate this, and you guys have all seen what it looks like when I'm in whiteboard mode. But this is what it looked like when I started playing with it last year. So you'll notice down the left-hand side, knowledge, skills, beliefs, support, being. What must they know? What must they be able to do? What must they be able to be before, during, and after? And it seriously was just scrawled on a whiteboard, a very large whiteboard in our workroom. From there, I turned that into, let me see if I can biggen that, embiggen, as they say on The Simpsons. I will embiggen that. That became a document that looked at, all right, well, what if we taught in immersion? So we did a lot in immersion that we could build on. Again, just like we're building now, what did we learn from the 101? We're right now also building on, I think we counted 17 or 18 immersion classes that have been taught, and how it's developed over the years. So what was the content that we did, and what are the objectives that pull out of that big chart? So you can sort of start seeing that this was very generative, very iterative. None of this was, well, if this is in this column, this goes here. This was everything from the stuff that we would do in immersion that you guys all experienced, was the physical space, which Jocelyn had mentioned in several posts that you shared, Jocelyn, about the importance of, eat something before the class. We're going to be sitting together for 3 hours. Make sure the temperature in the room is good. And during the pre-class call, the wonderful ability to ask them, what conditions do you need physically in the room to be at your best? Write that down so that you remember to do that each time. And so you can see how this just started to evolve into, okay, for the one-on-one conversations with instructors, what do we want to make sure they know? What are the learning objectives out of this? This wasn't in any specific language that you'd necessarily be taught if you were in, if you were in a curriculum in college about teaching adult education. This came from real English language and just how we were thinking about things and talking about things. Gail then took that, hang on, I don't want to do this yet. I want to pull a different one up on the screen. Gail then took that and turned it into, because she does have a degree in secondary education, she turned it into language that could make more sense in that. So looking at the activity, the content, the key questions, what are the outcomes, what are the reflection points, what are the materials that they need, etc. So again, it was very developmental and very, very iterative, and not a lot of, well, this will immediately become a lesson plan, except that as we eventually started to develop things, I think I'll share this one more. It actually did become lesson plans, and what you see here is the lesson plan that we drew up for the actual class, hour by hour. So for Catalytic Thinking 101, the lesson plan for session 1, what are the goals for this session? What are we going to do in the first hour? What are we going to do in the second hour? What is the content? What is the instructor going to say? Down to that level of minutia. But I need to share with you, and I really need to say this loud and clear. We wrote those lesson plans after the class. Because in this process, we're figuring out everything. We're moving. It's why it was in beta for the 101. Is how does it work to teach this? What are the things? I was very, very fortunate in the beta that I was in each of the classes. So I could say, this worked in this class, but it didn't work in this class. It worked better in this class if we did it in this way. Okay, let's do it this way. And we talk about it. But what I wanted you guys to have a sense of was that this was a very iterative process. And what eventually, let me see if there was anything else. No, not right now. What eventually came out of this was now we have lesson plans that are, let's say they're 93% there. And I can guarantee you, having taught immersion 17, 18 times, that if we get to being 95% there and we stay at 95% there, then we've done good. You know, we're going to be changing it as we go. Everybody's going to have their own way of phrasing something, their own stories that they tell. But what I wanted to give you guys a sense of is where we are. And yeah, Justin.
I just wanted to sort of riff off of what you just said, because it takes me back to when we were in the board meeting for Creating the Future talking about policies and bylaws. And the whole idea of recognizing that what we are documenting is things that encourage us to think in particular ways and come to appropriate conclusions for the situation. And so I think that that's something that I know I want to keep in mind. And as you were talking about that, 95% there, that really resonated to me, and just making sure that as I see these documents having that intent around them, but we really keep that present to recognize that that's part of the curriculum, is to allow for that, but that necessitates also then what you've said before, which is what will it take to make someone feel comfortable using that as a framework for conducting this and engaging this. So I just wanted to share that observation or point.
It's if it's always about the people, it's always going to change depending on who's in the class, and who's in the class, as Trey very poignantly said, is all of us. Mm-hmm. And we're practicing alongside them. When we talk about practice, during all of the sessions, when we start with awesomes and we start with practice, we as instructors / facilitators are sharing what we practiced too. And we're sharing where it went good, and we're sharing where it didn't go so good.
I think in that regard that it's part of what would be a feedback loop, that it's not all one way. It is what you're, and Justin, you had such wonderful examples today of the students' impact on you by what they realize in terms of what you were teaching them and how that impacts you. And I think that maybe that 5%, maybe it's more than 5%, is not quibbling on numbers, but is that cycle of going back and forth and knowing that the end of this class will be better in the next class because of this class. And that I think is hugely powerful, because then it's just not a canned presentation. It's the same every time.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the most powerful, I could not, what you guys are saying is just so aligned with what the intent has been. So it's making me smile. The last class is in part what would normally come under evaluation. And by the way, we sent out the evaluations for their 90-day evaluation and crossed out the word evaluation and said reflection. Because exactly what you noted, Justin, is that when it's just continuing reflection, during the last session, during the 101, and I can see it happen, it's what we've done in immersion for however many years, is bringing up those sheets that we talked about on day one of what your vision was for the class, what you wanted to be different, and together going through and checking off how did we do? What did we learn? How does it feel? And then having people share what feels different now than it did before. What's different in your life than it was before? And I'm smiling at the words that you used, Justin, when you talked about it in your class, is because that is those are almost the exact words that we used at the end of the class, is saying, there's our evaluation. I mean, it's like, that's it. Do we need, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you agree strongly? Do you disagree strongly? Or, I'm making a note to share the evaluation / reflection with you guys. So that is pretty much what's going to happen. What we did was we flowed from conditions and content, because we already had content. I mean, we've got the content from Immersion. So if we've got content, which is just the stuff, and we've got the conditions for success, flowing from that into what do people need to know, what do they need to understand, what do they need to be able to do, flowing from that to say, it'll probably take 5 or 6 sessions. Let's see what that means. You'll notice when we get into logistics, which we're going to do right now, that that we're planning on 6 sessions. But it may be 4. It may be 5. But just starting with an assumption of it's going to be approximately this. And they're going to be 3 hours each. So what does it mean we might do in a first session that pulls from all of our learning objections? And what would make sense, knowing what we know about the content, to do in the second session? And what would make sense to do in a third session? And by then we'll know, and that will become the lesson plan. The people who are signing up for it now, there are 5 people already signed up. My guess is there'll be 8, maybe 9. We'll see if, I'd like to push it so that there's 6 is the maximum we'll do. And having done 6, it's enough. And so we'll see how that breaks into classes. But they know it's a beta, and they know that they are helping us figure out how to teach it. And they know that at some point the instructors are going to look at each other and go, oh, that's how we need to do this, and it'll be perfectly fine. So how is this feeling so far? And any reflections, any thoughts? Lots of up thumbs.
Very, very mindful for how to achieve the highest potential of the class. It's wonderful.
Yay.
We're practicing right now.
I really like, and again, I'm just observing how I learn as we go through this. I really like seeing the whiteboard to the second sheet to Gail's piece, then finally to how it was turned into what I call a facilitator's agenda, the hour by hour. And then and that really helps me a lot because it just goes into clunk for me. And then the whole conversation about how live it is, and how that's just sort of, you've created a container, and then within that the people are there, and that you're sort of co-creating the moment for the people who are there, but also for the next people in the next class.
Yeah. Yay. You guys ready to move on to the next little bit that I want to share with you guys? I want to give us where we are in the logistics, where we are in the calendar of process that we have been talking about. One more share. You may remember that I posted this a couple of weeks ago in terms of all of the stuff that's happening simultaneously. The 101 class is being rescheduled. The first real 101 class is being rescheduled. in speaking with Rebecca and Lisa and Nancy, and Rebecca, you can speak more to this if you think it needs it. If not, totally good. When we do choose your words, Hildy. Because we were at the beginning of seeing what it would take to develop curriculum. And we did it the way we knew how to do it and then learned a ton. It took us, I think, 10, maybe longer hours of debrief just among the instructors after we debriefed with the participants to figure out what we'd learned and what would work better from start to finish. And one of the things that became clear is that we did not allow enough time in the process of developing all of the content pieces for me to unpack and for you guys to pull out of my head unpacking what was the why behind why I taught this in Immersion the way I did. So while we knew that we did not want, I'm going to stop the share for just a minute, while we knew that we did not want this to be, well, this is how Hildy teaches it, so this is how we must teach it. We knew we absolutely did not want that. What happened in going to the other extreme was we looked at the content, we said, okay, here are the pieces that we've already done. We've done the winding path, we've done those kinds of things, but we didn't break down, okay, Hildy, you invented this and you have been doing this 17 times. Why'd you do it this way? What's the thinking behind it so that if we're going to each take it in a direction that makes sense for us, that we know what the why is, that if we're going to be explicit to the class, what we're going to teach them about that. And so as a result of that, it didn't give me the opportunity to unpack that in my own head, because 17 times, you know, most of it I have done because it works for me. But that doesn't mean that it's going to work for anybody else, because they're not living in my head. So I don't know why it worked. I just know it worked for me in those circumstances, which doesn't help anybody with anything. And so what wound up happening a lot real time in the classes of the 101 beta is me working through that, which didn't give Lisa, Rebecca, Nancy, and Gail as much opportunity to practice teaching so that they would feel comfortable having you come on, one of you, as a newbie teacher on the 101, to say, oh my God, I'm going to be the lead teacher. I'm not even sure that I taught it the first time because of the Hildy effect, which, you know, I pretty much call it, because
there's a movie on.
So what we have been very, very mindful to do is to plan the development of this class to slow down so that it gives us the opportunity to pull out of my head why I taught things the way I did, not so that you guys will do it my way, but so that we get to the why and that we can be explicit about it, and so that I don't have to be in the betas for the 102. That you guys can co-teach it together because you'll have already figured that out. Does that make sense?
Is there time for a quick question on that?
I'm hoping so. That's why I stopped talking.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is super interesting to me because I've found it very challenging sometimes to co-teach because of this exact thing where you're trying to understand what is the meta conversation that needed to happen. So I don't think it's just the Hildy effect. I think it's the collaboration challenge. I think it's going to be there every time two instructors try and figure it out. And so understanding your process is incredibly helpful. You know, yes, you're Hildy and there's a sort of iconic, you know, Hildy effect thing there, but I just think it's going to be there. So I think really understanding what it looks like to get a meta conversation going about how it is that we can be in our own group. I don't know how to explain it, but that's really helpful.
Yeah.
No, I think, Andrea, what you're saying really resonates with me, kind of doing some co-teaching and actually trying to bring new people in to co-teach on a program with me. And, you know, big surprise, what we're realizing is it's all about the people. It's about us being able to understand what is it that you need to know to be able to feel comfortable? Actually, it started with, what do you need to feel comfortable? How do you approach this? What were my expectations of a co-presenter in terms of what I would expect them to be aware of, to be thinking about what I need from them, for me to be comfortable in the space. And, the person who I developed the program with and we took it for granted because we just naturally fell into a pattern with each other, and it worked. And when we had to bring new people in, it was really clear, like, oh my gosh, we have to start with, how do you do this? What's your approach? What do you need to thrive when someone else is teaching with you?
Which I think goes to the underlying, why do you do this? You're doing the how because of the why. There's an internal why that's being addressed in that. Yeah. And Hildy, I'm reflecting on the conversation we had yesterday with Michael, where it was, processes aren't replicable. The thinking behind the processes are replicable. And that is so jumping out at me right now as we're talking about this, is that it's, the exact approach Hildy takes may not be replicable by somebody else.
Well, you're trying to replicate the thing, right, rather than the thinking.
Right.
And
so going back to your continuum for the development of a course, and I apologize, I didn't see it clearly, but I think what Andrea just raised, which is, where is the window for the co-presenters to come together?
Yeah, and what I have already showed you and what I'm about to show you are two different things. What I already showed you is from the moment, this is what teaching the course looks like. The other stuff is the big stuff, and it is it is the most important conversations that we can have. It is the two conversations.
Yeah, I just think I think there's a point that I'm feeling where, like, right at that same place, or before you're even talking about that call, with the participant, where is the call with the co-teacher? Because it's fundamental to the teaching.
Right. Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. What we were breaking down in that particular thing was not about the teaching of it, but what people experienced being in the class. So let me dive in here, and in this it may not be as explicit, but ignoring. So what that says here is that we're going to sort of we're going to take some time on exploring the 101. I'm not as concerned about that right now. As I scroll down, you're not going to be able to see the heading, so I'm just going to share with you the second two columns are developing the 102 and then teaching the beta of the 102. And where we would have been on this week is designing the sign up, designing the reading and the viewing, and talking very specifically beforehand, and this gets in part to your conversation, Justin, about the conditions for instructors. So we would have already turned the learning objectives into content. We would have had a deep conversation about, okay, we've talked about what needs to be in place for the students. What needs to be in place for each of us? And again, using catalytic strategy to develop this. What needs to be in place externally? What are we going to do? Here's learning objectives. Okay, what do each of us need to feel comfortable? And that's each of us just talking about support as a group. Each of us individually having the conversation on our own. What do I need? Maybe very, very different than what Jocelyn needs, very different than what Justin needs, so that we all get to talk about what instructors will need to feel, to have, to know. And then designing session by session by session, including not only what happens beforehand, but designing how do we introduce people to the Facebook group. So once they have finished the class, what part of our job, as you saw in the fellows group, was to introduce people, to bring them in to the fellows group. Part of our job has to do with following up with them on evaluation. And And then you'll notice that we did another check-in regarding instructor conditions for success. And a big piece of that is generally the conversation about, again, in a very iterative way, of, okay, whoever's going to teach, you guys are going to get together and have that same conversation. At which point, the development would have been done April 3rd, and the actual class would be starting. And so we're a little bit behind, and that's all right. We've got catch-up time in here. And but just as that process, before we go into where we are in actually having people sign up and the class start, questions, how does that feel? Does that touch on things? Are there things that you think are missing, et cetera, et cetera? Shall I take silence as I go ahead? Okie dokie. People have been registering, and let me go back to full screen so we can all see each other. People have been registering for the 102 beta the same way they registered for the 101 beta, which was that we told them that we were so honored that they were going to help us with this, that A, it was at half the price of what we thought the tuition was going to be. Our target eventually, I will tell you guys, is $2,500 per course. And the reason that is the target is because we are also hoping to crowdfund a significant scholarship campaign that will offset that. Two reasons for that kind of price. One, in the worlds outside of the, and I'm using this word very intentionally, you guys know when I use this word, I use it intentionally, outside the nonprofit, we have no money, Trey's mouthing along with me, the nonprofit, we have no money sector, people value things differently. And for the value of what people are getting out of this course, we're looking at this eventually being something that the tuition is the value of the course. In the world where most people operate, which is the world of business and corporate. 2,500 may be high, we'll find out, we'll test it obviously, and we'll figure it out. But pricing things based on the we have no money sector actually devalues this for everybody, and a large portion of the world will devalue it, saying, well, if it's that shape, how good can it be? The other piece of it is that we can't adequately compensate instructors for the immense amount of time that it takes to do this. If you're charging what the beta is $750 a person. You know, you multiply that out by 6, and you divide it out by the formula, which, by the way, the formula as it stands right now, and you know, everything in the world is up for grabs, but this one seems to be working. You know, if it doesn't, we can change things. Is that 20% off the top of gross goes to cover expenses for creating the future? So it's just that's the break even for creating the future, and then out of that remaining 80%. 50% goes to creating the future, 50% goes to the instructors. And the instructors split that. If it's, let's say, for round numbers, let's say it's $2,000 and 5 people sign up, that's $10,000. $8,000 split 50-50 with creating the future means that for that several months, it's $2,000 per instructor. If 6 people show up, it's more, et cetera, et cetera. At $750, you know, it's a ridiculous thing to ask any of us to teach that. In the beta, we're all learning. The instructors are learning, the folks are learning. We are so grateful for their patience with our learning. And so that's just in terms of understanding the dollar part of this. And so part of our gratitude to them for participating And especially being as we wanted a broad spectrum of people, some of whom are in the 9-to-5 business world, some of whom are in the 9-to-5 government bureaucracy world, some of whom are in the freelance consulting world. We told them that that we would schedule the betas by when is good. Whenever a group could get together, we'd figure out how to teach that. And so at this point, we've told them that it's going to be, March, April, May-ish. And they know that. They've been through this process. They've been deeply grateful of what we've been able to assemble. That's all based on their time frame. What we learned this time that's a little bit different than last time is that the classes absolutely need to be every week. They need to be consecutive. So if it's 5 weeks, it's going to be 5 consecutive weeks. We experimented with time in between. It didn't work. It created too much lag time, and people are building relationship. They're building community among each other. So what you're seeing then on the screen here is that I am still hoping to have the scheduling done by the end of next week. And so one of the things that I'd like to talk with you guys about is who among you believes that you would like to and may be free to, depending on the timing, teach. Assuming that it is 6 consecutive weeks with pre-work beforehand and post-work after, which really means it is somewhere between 3 to 4 months of commitment. The intense once a week is happening during those 5 or 6 weeks. But what I'm looking at still is getting the scheduling of everybody so that we know what we've got. You know, do we have 5 people? Do we have 10 people? How many teachers do we need? How many classes are there going to be? Hopefully by that first week in March, we've done some of the work on what do they need at sign up? What do they need in the reading and viewing? What do we want to send them? What do we have? So that we can start sending that the beginning of March, the logistics email, the reading and viewing list, and then starting slowly to schedule the calls, the pre-class calls, which takes about a week or so because you guys know what that's like to try and schedule 5 or 6 people. Included in that is them having calls with Dimitri to go, well, actually in the beta, they probably won't need that. They won't need to talk with you, Dimitri, about the tech.
I had been thinking about that, and what my thought is that a kind of touch base.
We could do it. We could do a single session or something. Reminder.
Whatever, but I'm thinking we don't need to go through the whole catalytic thinking-based approach. But I do think that there were tech issues, there were whatever, there's some changes. Right. I think it's important that they feel really, really comfortable.
Right. Yep. So that's really, and then one of the things that we did with the betas, which is different than we would do with a normal class, because a normal class, generally one class will be happening at a time. You know, it'll be delightful if we've got 50 instructors and 15 classes are happening all at once. But right now, one class is going to happen at a time. With the betas, after the classes were over, we brought them all together. Rebecca named it the All Beta Lovin, and they all got to be together and share. Again, it was a lot of reflection, a lot of what have you practiced, a lot of the rhythm that they had already gotten into. And then afterwards, the introduction of them into the fellows group and the final reflection. So that's sort of the scheduling and logistics piece of this. And so thoughts, ideas, questions, reflections, how does this feel? What are you thinking? Go.
So Hildy, I'll jump in here. If we're looking at a consistent commitment, you're looking at about 18 to 20 weeks back to back from top to bottom. Maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's do it right now live. There's the instructors having their own conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be pretty ongoing. And the conversation, as Justin noted, that very specific conversation of what brings out the best in you. What are your conditions for success? And the questions like, if you catch me in the middle of a class saying words that I probably shouldn't say that are on the, I never want to say that word again list, what do you want me to do? What do you, how do we want to catch each other? The human part. So there's that conversation, which is probably ongoing. I shouldn't say probably ongoing, which will be ongoing, but having an initial conversation, at least a grounding conversation. There's sending out of materials, which, takes 15 minutes once you've got the materials and you've got everybody's emails. And once a week, you're just sending out. And remember, you guys may remember, depending on how long ago you've been in class, we do not send group emails. Everyone has individual touch until the class starts, until they get together in the class. Scheduling of the pre-class calls that you're going to have. So while it may be an X number of week commitment, Trey, the actual scheduling may take you a couple of hours in that week. The pre-class calls are somewhere, we tell people to schedule for 60 minutes. They occur usually a week to 2 weeks before the class. And the maximum you'll have is 6. But you'll be touching base with your co-instructor beforehand. You'll be having the call. You'll be hanging on the line afterwards. And so that's going to be 6 of those in that 2-week period. And then the intense part is the however many weeks, let's call it 6 weeks of the class. And that is getting together with the co-instructor before the class, going over what you're reflecting on, who's in the class. What, I was surprised when such and such said, this one seems like she needs a little bit more attention and hand-holding with this. This concept seemed a little bit difficult for this one. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that this one said this one and that the conversation went like this and then, whatever. And, okay, here's the stuff that we're going to present. Here's the content. Here's the things we know we need to cover. Which piece do you want to do? Which, the stuff, the planning stuff. Then there's the actual 3 hours of the class. And then there's usually about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, could be longer afterwards with your co-instructor. To breathe and celebrate and reflect. And we need to absolutely remember either A, next time to start with this, or B, to tell everybody else about this piece. This worked really well. And that cycle. So that is the intense time, is during that 6 weeks. And then probably make that 7 or 8 weeks, because then you're getting together and talking about evaluation, debriefing with the co-instructor, and et cetera. But that's pretty much the time commitment, if that does it. Yeah, please, Rebecca.
I'd also add there's so much that goes on outside of the class as co-instructors, nurturing and supporting everyone. So that's where you may set up a time to Zoom one-on-one with somebody in the class about something you could sense from them. It's the ongoing support in the Facebook group. So sharing things to engage them in conversation, celebrating what you're practicing as well as what they're practicing. So kind of like there's no lull in the conversation. It's just that we happen to all come together in the Zoom room once a week.
Yes, forgot about that. Thank you. Totally forgot. That in-between time is really critical for them. And each cohort gets its own Facebook group so that they can talk safely among themselves.
Rebecca, there was something that you just said that takes me back to what the practice that Andrea shared in thinking that this session is particularly about the catalytic listening, which is do we need intentionality around just what you said, which is someone gets to actually experience, be with intentionality, being on the other side of catalytic listening as part of the class, so that there's even something that's not the 6, everyone's together for 3 hours, but is there something that's intentional built around that everyone gets to experience a conversation like this, which I think, Rebecca, is naturally what you did when you said someone's feeling something and we reached out to them. But when I linked that to what Andrea said at the beginning of being on the receiving side of this, how important that would be to this kind of, for this session in particular that's about this.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely, it all depends on the situation, because sometimes there's something you can tell of a very personal nature with someone that we're not going to kind of being unpacking something right there. But then the whole feeling what it feels like to give, in this case, give advice, get advice, is the bulk of the time together is practicing the practice in real life situations with one another on all ends of I'm giving it, I'm getting it, I'm using catalytic listening, I'm being listened to in that manner, and completely hitting pause. You know, how does that feel? How does that feel? How does that feel? But there'll be times that you sense that someone's got something going on that is a separate conversation, and whether they want to talk or not, it's the co-teacher sensing that and reaching out to them.
As we start, and I jotted it down, Justin, to make sure that as we're looking at learning objectives, that we're putting that in there, that they experience what it feels like. I think we may have even said it because it's so good. I think I remember seeing it, that we said experiencing what it feels like to be on the receiving end. And in all kinds of aspects. And you're reminding me, Rebecca, of how many times, because they were using real life situations, we take a break at every hour. So take a break. We're going to ask you if there's a real life situation that you want to use as practice. It's a completely safe space. We do not record for that reason. And if you want to use it as practice, you can use real names if you want, you can use fake names if you want, you can do whatever. And almost to the people who stepped forward and said, yeah, I'll try something, I'll do something. We're so deeply grateful for having been heard in that way. And we weren't even in this class. We were in the overview class. We were talking primarily practicing causality, practicing being with each other, and ahas that they were having, and the feeling of gratitude for being the one that is receiving it. It just deeply powerful, which is awesome.
You know, one of the things that I'm thinking about, which is sort of peripheral to this, is in an anonymous way, all of the amazing stories that come out of these classes. And the capturing of the essence of those stories might be something that the co-instructors do in that reflection time, so that the story bank continues to build, again, in an anonymous way, unless the person wants to include it. But I'm reflecting back on the stories that I had heard in the 101 beta, which were some amazing events that happened, which I remember the feeling, I don't remember all the stories. So it would be wonderful to have those captured in some way to go, oh wow, look how this worked here.
You need to speak up because you
okay.
know.
Yes, I know, I did. Did everybody hear me?
Any other thoughts and observations? The power of being on the receiving end and feeling that is going to be even stronger in this class because this is more personal. And one of the things that I think and Trey, with your belief repatterning background, and Nancy with her counseling background, others who are part of our team with that background, there are going to be times where someone may step forward and say, I'm really dealing with something. And it's outside the realm of most of our professional expertise to help that person. The ability to recognize that and to know that we have resources available to us within our fellows group and outside of that is huge, is really, really important, because this is powerful stuff. This is really awesome stuff. And sometimes what winds up happening is completely off the radar until we ask. For instance, let's say that Susie is the one who has come up with a scenario, and the class is asking questions of Susie and listening and reframing and helping Susie. But John is one of the guys in the class, and it's triggering something for John. He's either been in Susie's situation, or the questions that the class is asking are just making something happen for John. And as we go around, you know, Jane is the teacher in the class, and she's noticing that, and after the class is over, reaches out to John and says, "Are you okay?" And John says, "I really would like to talk with you." The ability to say, I would love to, let's have a conversation, and to be able to, in that conversation, say, this is out of my league, but I've got somebody I really want you to talk to, and they understand this practice, and so knowing that we have that resource is a really, really beautiful thing, because this is an opening up thing for people who, as we've all experienced in this practice, sometimes haven't been heard in this way. Which is pretty beautiful and pretty awesome, and always unexpected. I'm reminded years ago we worked with a sobriety group for teens that, as part of the work they did, they acted out their lives. And so that was part of their sobriety. They had to be sober when they could be 24 hours sober, but they had to be sober when they entered the program. They made a dramatization of their lives. They went out and performed that in high schools, and it was really, really real, because it was kids talking to kids about what really happened in their lives. They did it at a Rotary, and their whole purpose was to try and get folks to bring them into their various schools and et cetera. And what they didn't realize is how many people in the room were dealing with their own sobriety issues, not their kids. It wasn't about their kids. And what they thought is, well, we're about teen sobriety. We want to reach out in case they have issues that they're dealing with their kids. It never occurred to them the large percentage of people that were dealing with their own addiction and sobriety issues in the audience. And it was like, and so, you know, just having the sense that we're doing some pretty awesome stuff, and that we have people who are available to us. Obviously, we have gone long. So let's just continue this conversation.
A couple of things coming to mind for me. One is we should talk more about Dimitri's idea of using the classes to build a story bank, because we need to be really respectful of which ones they want shared and how it's in their words. I mean, yes, the co-instructor could make a note that so-and-so shared a really interesting story, but how are we going to follow up on that to make sure that what's there is the way they would want it available as part of the story bank? That doesn't sound easy. It doesn't sound quick. The other is you've kind of just assigned what could be a major workload to Trey and Nancy. I mean, if people are in serious trouble, it's not a one-session kind of thing. Maybe we should find out how they feel about that.
The only reason that I mentioned Trey is because Trey has offered that.
Good.
And I'll speak to that concern, Jane. It has already occurred within the community where people have felt the need to reach out, and I am honored to assist in that way, because there is preparing and then there is repairing, and there is sometimes repairing needs to occur, you know, and that is a coming home to who we really are, and giving people space to do that. And sometimes they want to do that anonymously, and allowing them to do that and giving them the space to do that is key. So it's very doable and very, I don't want to say it's essential, because I don't want to set up a fear space around it, but to know that that is there gives comfort not only to the participants, but equally, if not more so, to the people who are facilitating and our instructors. And I would say that the opening is there for them as well, not just the participants, because that opening up occurs on so many levels. But thank you for asking that question, Jane.
Thank you, Trey. I just appreciate that unbelievably hugely.
Andrea, could you speak up?
Sure. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm using my computer. I want to, we're talking about the participants, but back to the instructor to instructor dynamic and the idea of newbie instructors. You know, the relationship that you have with Nancy and Gail is, you know, kind of epic, as we all know. And the kind of trust that you have there, and the qualities of being that they bring. So it's a pretty amazing thing. And so what we're, I think, talking about is how it is that each of us might move into that kind of level of relationship with another colleague, you know, in this group. And so that's at least for me, that's a big conversation. I'm like, who would I do that with? Who would wish to do that with me? What would we think about that looking like for one another? What would it look like to create that level of trust and care and love and brain intellectual zippiness and all of those things. And so then ongoing, then as we work together, whenever I do any kind of work, it's just a fantasy, of course, is just to be able to have a colleague there to say, oh my gosh, you know, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the other? So the idea of having the opportunity to work with others, and then to create a practice around how we practice that's big, you know. So and it's almost like I'm just listening to this and my brain's going, well, what would that look like, and how would that feel, and how would we create, you know, that space, and that my thought is, you know, on the things that you're talking about, Trey, I view this in a way as and this is gonna maybe not be the right words, but you know, we're trying to develop in ourselves a level of mastery in some of these things, which is something you can never master. You know, like you want to become a master in something so that you can model it and you can actually see yourself when you're not holding that, and that's huge, you know. And so how many years does that take, you know? Anyway, so that's, it feels like a forever thing. And so then the colleagues that I would work with would be my partners in that. Do you know what I mean? I would be their partner. I would be holding space for them, and they would be holding space for me. And so I'm just having that, it's all hitting me like, wow. And so the time commitment to the actual course is one thing, but really it's more about the culture around it and what we would want to create in terms of the relationship and the connection with each other, and what it would mean to one another. And it would seem to me to be as different as the people. I don't know. So.
Very much so. Any other reflections and what is standing out from what we talked about today? Jocelyn, you've been quiet. Anything that you want to share?
I'm mainly just appreciating all of it. So this has been a really good session.
I would like to share that even if we haven't fully stuck to it, I love that there's an agenda with times and what we were to more clarification that I can keep looking back at during the meeting of where are we at? If we don't get to that, what I think to myself, what does that mean? What can we do between meetings? It's the first time I felt like there was a meeting plan in a while, and I think it's been really helpful to make this meeting productive.
And you can thank Rebecca Hurd.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You can thank Rebecca Hurd. It has been fun to, Andrea, when you said the thought that when I go into something, I've got somebody going into it with me is, oh my God, wow. That's what it has felt like the past, talk about my awesome. As Rebecca and I are figuring out what are we in the scheme of creating the future. It's why you haven't seen any big announcement about anything, because we're still figuring out what are we. And that means each of us individually and collectively, but just having somebody to co-plan and co-create with is a deep gift. I'm a lucky girl. Jane, what you brought up brings us to the rest of the agenda. Because I don't want to push off the people who have registered forever and ever and ever and ever. I'd like to get us back on track. Here's what I was thinking we would do today when I was delusional, which I've been known to be. And I'm going to just quickly pull up the blog. On my computer. Look at that. Rebecca Hurd posted a blog post.
Really?
She did. She's amazing.
Wow.
Okay, what I was thinking about for today, what Rebecca and I had sort of talked about, was looking first at this, and it's in the agenda, this part of the article on what is this class all about. This course in catalytic listening will provide an overview of the practice and will then provide the opportunity to practice each aspect of the practice. During the class, we'll explore the following questions by experiencing them not as a theoretical exercise, but as a highly practical one. Why do people who ask for advice often argue with the advice you give them or simply fail to do what you suggest? What does it take to help people discover inner wisdom they didn't know they had? What does it take to transform fear and scarcity into possibility and potential? How can one unpack what masquerades as people talking about their problems into positive forces, their dreams, their values, their strengths? What does it take to reframe interpersonal conflicts, to replace venom with compassion, and et cetera, right there in those bullet points. So what we were thinking is starting with that rather than the conditions for success, as those were very concrete, and making learning objectives out of those. So if it's that whole thing around, for example, the advice piece, what are the learning objectives that we want to see out of those? What must people know? What skills must they have? What must they believe, et cetera, before, during, and after? And what content do we have or process or things that we've done? And then moving from there into doing the same thing for the conditions for success. that was posted at the other post with the link. I'm wondering how much of this we can get done in between if each of us takes an hour at some point and plays with it, either on our own, or if you guys want to pair up, if you want to take time together, if you want to schedule another meeting. I am happy to be there for another meeting. If you would like to schedule something in between our normal meeting on Wednesdays, if you want to do something, I've got time on Monday. I have added the spreadsheet. And what I'm going to ask you guys, if you have the agenda up on your screens, could you just make sure you can get into that spreadsheet on the Google Doc? Pull it up on your screen on the agenda, and see if you can get into the Google Doc. I just want to make sure. I thought I made it available to everybody, like without having to sign in, but I just want to make sure. Jane, you're muted, so.
Just nodding, saying no problem. I've been in it already.
Okay. All right. Well,
not an easy document to print. I wouldn't recommend
easy document to print. And Andrea had offered to clean it up because my ability with Excel is minuscule at best. So
improving every day.
Yeah, not enough. So what is you guys' pleasure in terms of our catching up? What would you like to do? And I'm happy to assist and facilitate with whatever you need.
So I'm going to ask the dumb questions. That's my specialty. So what is the assignment? That, I guess, is the dumb question. So what, by next time we meet, if it could look like anything, what would it look like?
In my mind, it would look like we feel comfortable that we've looked at all of the conditions for success and all of the things we told people they would learn and turned them into learning objectives, and that we feel comfortable that we could say, yeah, that's pretty complete, and if we missed one, we'll figure it out along the way. But that we've turned it into learning objectives, and for every learning objective has said, here's either a thing we could teach, a thing we could be explicit about, an exercise we already have, a video they could watch, that kind of thing.
Okay, and that means, so the turning the conditions means that list that you showed us from the blog post, and then turning those into learning objectives. Did I get that? Okay.
Learning objectives and content in that spreadsheet, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we want to make sure the spreadsheet reflects all of that, and any gaps that are in it now are filled in. Anything that's not clear is clarified. Anything that's what in the world we put that down there for? It belongs somewhere else, gets moved. You're asking us to edit the document.
Yeah, and the thing that I love about the format is that so long as it's in the before, during, and after phases, so we know when it will be inserted. You know, the angels on the head of a pin question of, is that really knowledge? Is that a skill? It doesn't matter. So long as it's listed, we know that we'll cover it.
Okay, and would it be helpful for me to move the pieces from the blog post into column B?
Sure.
I'm just trying to think, like, just to have those, or somewhere on the document, just so we're
adding those into the document. The bigger piece is going to be, quite honestly, the huge conversation we had about conditions. So if you look at if you look at the agenda, and you know, there's 2 links under item 4, learning objectives. Aside from the spreadsheet. One is the promo page, which just has 4 or 5 bullet points. And one is the conditions conversation that we all had, which is huge. Much of which could be consolidated.
Okay, so that's where I'm a little bit unclear. So when it says review the conditions for success to find any we have not addressed, and then you have spreadsheet of conditions becoming learning objectives. That's what you were just discussing. And what I thought that you were sort of saying is on that blog post, when you scroll down, that they're sort of consolidated, and that's a nice.
What is consolidated here in this blog post, Andrea, is content we told people they'd learn.
Gotcha.
What is
bucketed in some way, just to have it be in one place.
And then what is in the other blog post, and I will pull that one up as well, is a very, very long list of what do our participants need to know, what do they need to feel, what do they need to experience, what do they need to, and turning those into learning objectives is another part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Thank you.
I think one of the ways I'm seeing this, Andrea, is that the process of looking at the conditions, that somewhere in there is almost a flag that can point back to these 5 things and sort of say, it seems like this is an ingredient to, our second bullet of people discovering their inner wisdom. That might be a way of, because then that may then become an organizing principle for some of the sessions to be able to say, oh, if all of these seem to point to that, it makes sense to be explicit about all of them at once. So maybe that's a way of thinking about it.
Okay.
So do you guys want, the question is, do you guys want to do this individually as homework? Do you want to meet again together? Do a small group of you want to meet together, whether or not I can be there? Because I think that, it's easy enough to put the what needs to get done down. What do you guys want to do for moving forward?
I personally want to have a conversation with all of us about how we would want to approach this document. That would be a helpful thing. Kind of like what could it look like? And as opposed to everyone goes off to their corners. That's my own personal preference.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
It seems like an important task is to convert some of what's on the blog into the learning objectives. Am I hearing that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like that's the beginning of the starter document, where then can be filled in the various conditions during the various stages of engagement. So that act of translation should happen, and also we need to fill these whiteboard approach to an Excel spreadsheet into a document, that then people literally could work with, like Jane was suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
we'll with it together, Jocelyn. So that we don't need to worry about. Once it's in that spreadsheet, we will all just have that spreadsheet, and we'll say, okay, now let's look at what the sessions are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be doing that together.
Are we doing together the process of taking the blog posting material and turning it into learning objectives?
That's what we're asking right now.
Okay, that seems like that's fair. And I apologize if I'm being reductive. That seems simple. I said seems. To take that and translate it onto the page for people then to review and bless or whatever. And it's then that there's the value, I think, I'd like to suggest, of pairing up. I'm not sure it's a good use of our time and energy for everyone individually to really dive into it. I would suggest instead more of this, what we call maybe snowball approach, where we do some reflection individually, and then we come together in pairs and start to populate some of those areas of condition. And then maybe we come together as a foursome, and then come together as an eightsome in order to see where we are. I think we can benefit then from the time and energy people would have to put into it. And also, I suspect we're pretty well aligned in how we want to approach this. There's still talking and discussion and affirming to do, but it's not we're not really doing it from scratch. We have the benefit of what you've done already and what we've done already, and certainly we have the benefit of what got learned in the process of teaching 101. So coming back around, if you had met, I think you had either volunteered, Andrea, or Andrea had volunteered to create more of a starter document for us, and I would be happy to help with that, if that would be helpful.
That'd be awesome. Do you want to do you have time to have a call right after this call?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Where do you guys want to be by the time we meet next Wednesday? What do we want to have done by then, and what do we want to be able to accomplish next Wednesday, given what is on the schedule, or given where we are in the schedule? And I will share that screen once again.
Thank you.
I think part of where I'm feeling is a need to sort of, having seen all of this and all of the resources from the 101, to now look at those conditions again. And actually, I feel like my homework is to really look at those conditions and get familiar with them and begin thinking through what that would look like for me individually. So that, I think, because I feel like I can't actually answer your question yet, Hildy, because honestly, I haven't even committed the brain space to making heads or tails of all of that, to know what would be the best way to make heads or tails of that for me personally. So I'm feeling kind of what's coming up for me of what I feel like I need to do, which is my own personal homework, is to do that, is to review what you've shared with us, to begin to link it to the raw material that we have from the blog post and those sessions, and be very prepared to then answer the question that you're asking, which is, how do we now take what we've all sort of started to make heads or tails about into something a little bit more structured? That's
my guess is you're not alone, Justin. Would others of you like the week to pretty much read everything that that we've shared? The links are all, I believe, all in the agenda that I prepared for today. Would it be helpful to take the week, read, absorb, and look at that spreadsheet that is where we got last week? All I did was take what we talked about last week and stick it into a spreadsheet.
I certainly need to go through this. I mean, I hadn't seen this blog post until during this meeting, and I certainly had not finished reviewing the Excel spreadsheet. I just glanced at it. But I'd be willing to commit to do that in time to have a meeting with one other person on Monday or Tuesday and sort of see if we can add some notes to the spreadsheet, or perhaps take different portions of it so we're not all focused on the start, and have a little more done for Wednesday. I don't know that we can finish it, but in a position to finish it quickly on Wednesday would be my desired outcome, so that we still have time to talk about the advanced reading and viewing, at least. I think practicing doing stuff in pairs would be good preparation for being instructors.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you, Jocelyn.
So here's another thing that I'm hearing then, that before next Wednesday, that each of us will review everything that we've already created to sort of ground ourselves, and that each of us will reach out to one other person to spend some time talking about it and working on turning it into learning objectives, and just adding to that spreadsheet in real time, because what I've done is created that spreadsheet in a Google Doc so that everybody can edit it. It can be added to.
And we can use the Facebook group to note who's meeting with who and what section they are concentrating on. So hey, if you don't get your act together quickly, they're going to get one of the sections that's left that the first group of people didn't want to deal with.
They're all fabulous.
So Hildy, that's feeling a little different from what I thought I was suggesting a little bit earlier, which is fine. I want to clarify. I thought that Andrea and I could work together on drafting the learning objectives based primarily on the blog input and other inputs from reviewing, so that would leave people's bandwidth available to focus on the conditions, which is the heavy lifting in my view, that's the heavy lifting of this exercise.
That would be a blessing if you guys did that. We would need then to do less.
I think it's a yes and, Jocelyn. I think that would be beautiful. That if the two of you could take that one blog post that is just the content, just the here's what you're going to learn, and flow that into the spreadsheet of learning objectives.
Right.
Everybody do the homework anyway of reading everything and grounding themselves. And then everybody else being able to pair up or individually add their stuff to that spreadsheet. That would be fabulous.
And then once we see what that translates into, Andrea, we can make a suggestion or simply throw it to the group to decide how we'd like to divide up an approach talking about and starting to fill in the conditions. I think once we see literally how many outcomes there are, then we'll have a better sense of, well, this pair you take these three and this pair you take these three, or, whatever. But I think, I don't want to speak too much for Andrea here, but I think it's straightforward, and I think if she and I get together and we're agreed on the approach, we can do it pretty efficiently.
Jocelyn?
And that'll help get us off to a more structured start to populating the conditions.
I would like to kiss you, Jocelyn. Thank you. I think that's a great idea. I think Hildy would like to kiss you too. But
I think we'd all like to kiss her. Sure. And on my screen, Jocelyn, you're in the middle, so everybody just goes.
That's really nice. My partner's in the next room.
She can kiss you too.
All right.
The other little reflection is that two things. One reflection is that I like this idea of maybe having a study buddy, like not just a one-off thing, but like if we had a study buddy, like my call with Rebecca was kind of a barf up call, but it could be more intentional. And then you could say, hey, what the heck was that? Did you get that? Those kinds of things. I feel it's like a really good thing to create, and we could, and it also reinforces the idea of maybe we could switch off of study buddies and start to get a little bit more of a feel for each other too, as reflection partners. So it serves many purposes. And then the only other thing is just to, I would love to request that we always make time for reflection at the end. I know we do, but we often get so busy that we skid into home plate and then we blow up, and some of us get to reflect and some of us don't. So I just wanted to point that out, that I just love that part, and I think it's good to do.
Which leads us to what is standing out for everybody from this meeting today?
Thank you for the chill moment, Andrea.
What is standing out for you guys?
So I wanted to share kind of a personal struggle that I just realized I have, which is, I think, to your question earlier, Hildy, about who would want to teach this, my inner self said yes, jumping up and down. But I literally just looked at my calendar for March, and I'm not going to be able to make the 3 consecutive calls after this because I'm actually going to be teaching stuff. And so I think for my own sake, as well as for the sake of the group, that precludes me from being able to feel comfortable stepping into that role for the beta. Just to put out there, not that I was claiming the role, but I wanted to share that. It also means that I have to think a little bit differently about what the next month looks like for me being able to participate and contribute to this group, because I won't be able to do it live. on the Wednesday afternoons that I'll have to sort of carve out the time to listen and reflect and contribute. So while not really a reflection, it's the state of where I am right now that I need to sort out so that I can sort of be productive for this group as well as myself over the next 4 weeks. So just sharing.
I'm not only appreciating that, Justin, but it's sparking for me that we all have lives, and that if we're going to be talking about bringing out the best in each other and being human, that's a conversation worth having about what, Susan couldn't make it today and suddenly realized she couldn't make it today. Does that mean, you're out, you can't teach? I think I'd much rather have that as a conversation than any one of us deciding. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable, that's one thing. But I would much rather have a conversation than a rule. So I don't want to uninvite you or have you feel uninvited on an assumption that if I can't be here for the meetings, then obviously I'm out. And I'd much rather have that as a conversation.
Oh, I don't feel that. I'm self-selecting. That I feel, given what is I know going to be happening over this next 3 weeks, it is something that I feel I will be playing catch up on, which I'm comfortable with. But that does not create the best conditions for me and for those who would be in the beta, for me to be playing catch up to the thinking as opposed to being part of the thinking. And once I'm caught up, and I feel caught up, then all is good.
Yay. And I guess in general, what I'm thinking is that it's a conversation not just about your specific situation, but in general. But thank you. Others, what is standing out for you guys? What did you notice as you took notes today? What did you circle?
I like Jane's comment about how the agenda really helped shape things for her, and I feel that at a higher level we're moving into the part of this where it's literally and figuratively taking shape, and that's exciting. I like this part.
Me too.
There's a piece that comes up for me as part of the conversation when we were, Hildy, you were talking about the Hildy effect. And Andrea, you had spoken about just general collaboration as well as yourself, Justin, collaboration in the co-teaching experience. I just want to echo that there, as much as a founder does have a tendency to drive the that feeling is felt of that driving, there is something that happens in the co-teaching and in the collaboration experience that is just stock. It's not aftermarket. It's the same all the way through. And it really is that space of, it's not just what skills I'm bringing to the table or what tools we're going to use. It's how do you best thrive in this environment, and what does a bad day look like, and how are we going to support ourselves in the ebbs and flows of this relationship, and being in that relationship. And I when I work with small businesses, we just liken it to dating. A joint venture is like a date, and a strategic alliance is like going steady, and a partnership is like getting married. And sometimes the reason business partnerships don't work out is because they decided to get married before they even had a date. And so this is, to me, that's similar to this, is we get a chance to date. We get a chance to joint venture. We get a chance to get to know each other and see how each other plays in the sandbox. And that comes with learning what good looks like and what bad looks like, and how to support in all the ebbs and flows of the journey. So that's what stands out for me, and that's what I'm hearing happening here. And I'm just very fortunate. I'm not 100% sure whether I'm actually going to be able to step up and instruct. My priority was just to be part of the evolution and to be part of the conversation. And then if it fell within something that I could commit to, then going from there. So right now I'm just happy to be part of the process and really, really enjoyed today's gathering. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? What is standing out to you guys?
I want to comment on the idea that we already have a cohort of people willing to be our test group and help us develop this. And that is making me feel some accountability towards being ready for them that may not have come up in prior sessions. That's kind of a driving force thing of, hey, we now owe it to that group who's willing to take a risk on this to be ready to give them that chance in the best possible way. It's tangible now. It's real individuals.
Real people with real names and real bodies.
I am sort of thinking about reflecting and feeling the reality of community here. Not that there hasn't been a community throughout, but the gelling of the individuals here around real world, what can we do, what's next, which sort of echoes what Jane just said and what you were saying, Jocelyn and Drea as well. That is really noticeable to me, is that sort of, it's like it has shifted into a new level at this point, and that's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Andrea?
I feel as you do, Dimitri. I think we're all feeling it, I'm guessing. That there's a level of cutting through here. We're getting to know each other and stepping into it. And I feel I love what you said too, Trey, about dating. I've always been a terrible dater. I just never got asked out on dates, so I tend to just go straight for the let's go steady. And so it's just so nice to have a way to just be with all of you. And I guess what I'm seeing is I feel like we're all starting to stop seeing this as Hildy's. I mean, I know we've been doing this for years, but even more so, how can we own different pieces of it and parts of it? And it took some courage, at least for me, to offer because I don't feel, I don't feel worthy, honestly. So my first thought was, well, I want to talk with all of you about what would it look like, because I know what it would look like if I was the queen. To be the librarian, to me, is a very amazing thing because I can make it so that it works for me. And so I think what I realized as I thought about it is that I already think that way. I think about how I want it to work so that it works for everybody. And so my brain is already on that track. But I'd like to just open it up to you. You don't have to do it on today's call, but that's what I'm inviting, is for you to tell me, and you don't have to clean it up or tell it to me in a nice way or any old way. You can tell me however you really feel about what kinds of supports would be great for you. What would it look like for you for there to be, I know a lot of us, if you're like me, you're running from thing to thing. You want to be prepared for this call. What does it look like for you to have it be easier for you to be prepared for this call? What would it take? So sharing those kinds of thoughts in any format, email, whatever, would be great. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. I have ideas and I want you to share them with me. And then I can hold that space and then kind of come back to you and say, here's what I heard. What if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? What if we did it the other way? And then here's all the things that Dimitri and Hildy and everybody else has built. Let's build on those things. Let's pull this piece and, you know, tweak it this way and blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the mission in action. And it's creating, accomplishing of that mission tangible.
Yeah. Rebecca, how about you?
I'm thinking of Jane's Our Beautiful Ocean analogy, because, you know, we're talking about everyone who could be here today, but we're also setting the conditions up for those who couldn't be here today, for those who step in, excuse me, in May, for those who step in a year from now, or how are we welcoming context, you know, invite, you know, not like, oh, well, you're the new kid on the block. And I know everything will be baking in. Will create that space for more and more people to step into this. It's not a club where you're in or out, and if life happens, you'll be caught up, because whatever do you need to feel supported if you miss the meeting, maybe more than simply viewing it, you know. So and knowing that that's the place we'll come from for everything we create. And I really feel the team, you know, what you feel from the kindred spirits, and we're working on something together, and we're honoring what happens when we take the time to get to know each other. And that's what creates great co-teachers together, is knowing our whole person, not, oh, that's my co-teacher, you know, that's my friend and my co-conspirator.
Yeah. The thing that is standing out for me is sort of everything that you guys just said, all of you. And it is this, I'll share the screen one more time. It won't be surprising to you guys. This graphic has just been in my head for easily the past half hour, which you'll all recognize from Immersion. We've got an aggressive agenda ahead of us. We've got people who are waiting to take a class. In the back of my mind, I'm going, all right, we're already 2 weeks behind, and we just took a day, we just, and then the trust the process part of me says, yeah, but you know what? The thing that you thought you needed to get done today is going to get done. It's just going to get done in a different way. And it's going to get done in a way where each of you stepped in and said, yeah, here's how we could do it. Well, this needs to get done, so let's do it. And there was this palpable sense of let's do it and we'll do it, which is why I said I'm feeling what all of you guys are talking about here. But I'm feeling, once again, the power of going slow to go fast, taking the time we did today to ground ourselves in where we are, because, you know, the first couple of meetings that we have about any project is always starting at the high potential. It's easy to have that conversation. It's easy to have the conversation about, okay, well, if that's the high potential, what are the conditions? And then once you sort of get into connecting those conditions to the stuff is when people go, where are we? What are we? And the importance of being able to step back and say, okay, yeah, there's stuff that has to get done, but making sure we all feel grounded in where we are in the process, so that we're not going, I don't know. That's, you know, it's going slow to go fast, and I just am deeply appreciating that today, and that is so much a part of who we are. That's so deeply ingrained into the work that we're doing, that the assumption of course we'll get the stuff done. You know, that's it. We'll just get it done. Of course it'll get done. Is pretty awesome. So thank you guys. And we will. I just look forward to seeing everything and seeing you guys on Facebook and seeing you all next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and I couldn't love you guys more. So thank you.
Sure, you could. Hey, Andrea, I'm gonna send you a Zoom invitation in about 5 minutes.
Great.
You still want to talk?
Ladies
okay, great. Thank
Bye,
you.
Jess. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.